statistical mathematical fact
never has been down,
has broken every single record. There is no asset that has come close.
It's the only thing in the industry that was not touched, that was not hacked, and it never fails doing what it promised in 2009. It's never
What's
failed.
the best performing asset the world has ever seen? And you'll find out that it's Bitcoin.
Good morning, good afternoon, evening, wherever you are piping in the world today. Happy Easter, happy Resurrection Day if you celebrate. Welcome to all supporters, the haters, the Bitcoin naysayers. Welcome to the followers, Bitcoiners, the traders. Welcome to all. Had some time this morning, it's still morning for me, to join you on this glorious Sunday. Just want to know what's on your mind. Let's talk my favorite topic. Let's talk Bitcoin today. Here to answer any questions that anyone might have. I do want to start off our Q&A session today by reminding you that, first of all, my name is Oliver Velez. I consider myself a 13%er or a 13% Bitcoiner. I by no means consider myself an expert or Bitcoin expert. I've mentioned on a variety of occasions that I do not believe that such a thing exists. That Bitcoin is so new and so unique in the human experience that it is very difficult for anyone to be an expert. As far as Bitcoin is concerned, I believe that we're too early. I believe that all of us who consider ourselves Bitcoiners are learning about Bitcoin in real time. That is what I'm doing. And I think there's some benefit to us learning in real time together, making mistakes together, going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole together, deepening our knowledge about Bitcoin, true value, the human experience, and its effect on the human experience, etc. So, not an expert, but I'm certainly willing to share anything that I've experienced, any information or knowledge that I've arrived at throughout my near 4 years of going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. AZBTC21 has a question here. Oliver, what are your thoughts on Mr. 100? Who is he, and why over the last few days is he buying less available from his supplier? That's a very interesting question. Very glad you brought that up, AZBTC21. For those of you who are not aware, there is a relatively new accumulator of Bitcoin that has captured the attention of probably people all over the world ever since this person or entity or nation state has started a relentless accumulation program of BTC. I believe that this account started accumulating Bitcoin in November of 2023, late last year, and hasn't stopped. In fact, this account has only stepped up the pace at which it's been accumulating Bitcoin. Back in November, it started consistently buying 100 Bitcoin per day, and it has persisted buying 100 Bitcoin per day all the way to today. That's massive accumulation. And in the last several months, those 100 Bitcoin per day went to hundreds of Bitcoin per day, as many as 2,000 Bitcoin in a day, 1,800, 1,400, 800, 700. And so this account has only accelerated the accumulation. Now, what's also interesting is that the account, if you look at it, is actually up several $billion in profit from a USD denominated perspective. So there's I believe, if I'm not mistaken, almost $3 billion in profit, certainly north of $2 billion in USD denominated profits. There is no letting up. Now, what AZBTC 21 is mentioning here is that those people who are monitoring this account very closely have noticed that over the last several days, the amounts per purchase have dropped below 100. Now, the accumulated amount for the day is still in the hundreds of Bitcoin. But what's been noticed is that for the first time since November, individual purchases are less than 100. And so this is very interesting to see, and in my opinion suggests that the availability of Bitcoin in these amounts are becoming smaller, less. So I believe this account is having not the same success in terms of purchasing 100 at times at a clip anymore. And this would make sense because Bitcoin is maintaining its USD denominated price around 70,000. And the longer it stays there, you have to assume that the available supply at that price level will ultimately start to wane. And I think we're seeing that in the activity of Mr. 100. So I do think that whatever source that this account is using is running out of Bitcoin in the quantity that allows this account to buy at 100 Bitcoin at a clip. Now, it could be a temporary situation or it can be enduring. That remains to be seen. But right now, it certainly appears to be the case that Bitcoin is drying up. The available supply is drying up at the current price level. Now, the other part of the question is, who do I think it is? And this is all speculation because despite the fact that many people do not look at Bitcoin as a privacy coin at all, it does have some privacy features. And that's something I'd like to touch upon in just a moment as well. So it's not private in terms of the network being open and available all to see, but it is pseudonymous in a certain to a certain extent where there are no names or there's no identity that is required to be tied to a specific Bitcoin address. And so while we can see the activity on the time chain, we can't really know who is associated with that address. Now, it is my suspicion that it's probably a small to medium-sized nation state that is accumulating Bitcoin. Now, this account or this address has been tied to, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a South Korean exchange. Can't remember the name, but someone can post the name. So we know the exchange on which this buying is occurring, but we don't know the identity. And so could it be a nation state that has an account, maybe one of a few, and this is one of the accounts that nation state is using to accumulate Bitcoin? Perhaps the sheer amounts would suggest that that's not a very bad probability. It's a very good probability. We're talking billions upon billions of dollars. at a steady rate that is uncommon for an entity like MicroStrategy, or even some billionaire investor. They usually don't buy with this type of consistency. So I would, if I were a betting man, I'd bet that it's a nation state of some sort. Now, some people have actually pontificated on the possibility of it being some offshore entity controlled by BlackRock and things of that nature. And so there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there regarding this account, but it's certainly interesting to watch. I think the most important thing that we get from this is that this is big money, irrespective of the source. It's big money. It is relentless. And it is making an already limited supply more limited. There seems to be no regard for price, no regard for timing at all. It's just relentlessness in your face. And it should send a message that you probably should be doing something similar. So very interesting to watch this. Very interesting to watch this account, and I'm curious as to it'll be noteworthy to see when this account actually slows down or stops. That is certainly not the case now. Are very, very powerful, very powerful. JCT says, can you explain about UTXO management, especially as fees increase? What happens to Bitcoiners in the global South that aren't aware of its implications? What should we do about this? Yes, UTXO management. This is something that is certainly necessary for serious Bitcoiners to understand at this point. But let me start from a base level here. UTXO stands for unspent transaction output. And what a UTXO can be viewed as is basically an individual bill in your wallet. So if I were to use this as an analogy, let's say someone has $100, a total of $100 in their wallet, but the $100 is made up of a variety of different denominations. So there are some fives, there are some tens, there are some 20s. And it's these individual bills with different denominations that make up the total of $100. Well, if we go with that analogy, a UTXO would be akin to an individual bill. So a wallet might have $100 worth of Bitcoin in it. An address might have $100 worth of Bitcoin, but that $100 might be made up of several UTXOs, several bills, right? So when we talk about UTXO management or bill management, if we go with the analogy, it's important at this stage to make sure that your bills or your UTXOs are large enough to they're large enough to deal with a possible higher fee rate environment for the Bitcoin time chain, right? So there is a possibility if your UTXO or the bill you have in your address, your wallet, those words are not the same, by the way, but It does make people understand it a little bit better. But it's important to ensure that your bill or your UTXO is not so small that in the future, if fees were to go higher, the fees are higher than the value of a UTXO or a group of UTXOs. So, as an example, if the fee rises to a point where if the fees rise to a point where it's $7 to move a transaction on average, $7, and you have a UTXO of 80 cents, then that becomes dust, or what's commonly referred to in the industry as Bitcoin dust, right? Meaning that it's useless, it's gone forever. It's sort of like lost change, right? Because you're not going to pay $7 to move 80 cents, right? And so it becomes unusable Bitcoin. Now, this dust factor actually makes the scarcest asset on earth even more scarce. All right. So dust does exist to this very day, where there are UTXOs that are so tiny, all right, that even in today's relatively low fee rate environment, that they're too small to move because it costs more to move than the value of the UTXO. I can't remember what percentage of the network constitutes dust right now, but it's not very small, which is really interesting in and of itself. So Bitcoin is scarcer today than the 21 million that will ever exist by two things: lost Bitcoin, which will probably happen somewhat indefinitely through death, through user error, and things of that nature. So Bitcoin will become more scarce through loss of keys and death. It will also become more scarce through this dust factor. So UTXO management on the part of an astute Bitcoiner is extraordinarily important. You must make sure that you are consolidating your bills, your UTXOs, in sizes that will ensure that even in a higher fee environment, you don't have a UTXO that's smaller than the fee environment. And you can do things even with small UTXOs. You can combine them with other UTXOs to get the combined UTXO up in value. And this you can do periodically. Now, there's a great article on UTXO management that, let me see if I can post this, that was put out by Unchained Capital. Most of you who have been following me for a while, you do know that I use Unchained Capital. They are a great collaborative custody, Bitcoin custody company. And they put out an amazing article, which I will post under JCT's question here. On UTXO management. And I suggest anyone who wants to start the journey of becoming educated, they start there, start with that article. And I believe that in the near future, many of the things that are built for Bitcoiners, the wallets and the hardware devices, will sort of have things built in them that take care of a good portion of UTXO management, such as delivering warnings when a UTXO is too small, suggesting UTXO management and selecting the UTXOs that should be combined and things of that nature. I'm actually aware of certain things that are being built to this very day in that regard. So in the future, I think it's going to be easier for people to sidestep this potential problem in the future. But right now, it's I think it would behoove every serious Bitcoiner to get up to speed with what UTXO management is and why UTXOs and their sizes matter. All right, good question, JCT. I posted that link, by the way, to the article. And the title of that article is, What is a Bitcoin UTXO and Why Do They Matter? That was put out by Unchained. All right. All right. Sani just posted something that gave an example of bad UTXO management by exchanges. So interesting. Yeah. All right, guys, what else? What else is on your mind? Sani, the man who barely sleeps. Glad you're here, Sani. Let me, since I don't really see any additional questions here, maybe I can spur some by, stay here. I can spur some by talking about this a bit here. Calvin says I couldn't help myself. Yeah, I had some time, Calvin. Absolutely. It's true. Had to come on. All right, I made a comment just a bit ago regarding Bitcoin not being considered as a privacy coin. And in one sense, it's not, and it's not supposed to be. There are a variety of shitcoiners, altcoiners, who use the fact that Bitcoin's time chain is an open protocol, and therefore it lacks privacy. They use that as this excuse to create their own version of money that's more private, and they look at Bitcoin or construe Bitcoin's openness, its open protocol, as a flaw. And this is a grave error. It's a grave error. And the people who promote this idea that Bitcoin is flawed because it is not 100% private, they are either uneducated and uninformed about sound money and how sound money comes into being in a layered system. They're either ignorant, uneducated about that at best, those who promote this idea, or they are scammers at worst, who are just basically finding a narrative to spin up a pump and dump shitcoin. And so I find that the people who come from this angle fall into those two groups. Now, the vast majority, because the vast majority aren't spinning up their own scamming shitcoin, the vast majority are just unaware that money, especially sound money, comes into being in layers. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Bitcoin is the base layer, or what has commonly been referred to in the space as it's layer one. Okay. Layer one. It's base money. It's base layer money. Now, you want in a sound money system, you always want your base layer to be totally transparent and open. The problem that we have throughout the world today is that base layer money is secret, centralized, and controlled by a group of men. And we don't have knowledge of what's really going on, what the supply is, and things of that nature. And this closed system where no one really knows is how we're stolen from. It's how we are debased. So, for instance, dollars. How many US dollars exist in the world today? Does anybody know that? Now, the fact that no one knows how many US dollars exist, how many were printed last hour, last day, last week, how many dollars were destroyed, because that's not an open system and it is centralized and controlled by a small group of men, right? We are forced to go out into the world, wake up every single day of our life, and we have to work for that secret money, a money that we can't possibly know. Well, if I earn this portion, how much of the total supply do I own? There's no way to know that. And so this is a problem. It's the base problem with money today, that it is secret, that no one knows how much is out there. No one knows how much is being printed. No one knows what percentage of the base layer of the money that you have earned, what percentage that represents of the total pie. And so Bitcoin solves this by being an open protocol for all the world to see. In addition to that, it is not centrally controlled. It is not run or operated or manipulated or influenced in any way by any human being. Every human being can for free see every single transaction that has ever existed, that ever took place, all the way back from January 3rd, from the Genesis block, January 3rd, 2009, to the first mined Bitcoin block, January 9th, 2009, all the way to today. Every single Satoshi is accounted for. It is audited every 10 minutes for the world to see the audit every single 10 minutes. There is no money, no protocol, no base layer of money that has ever given us this level of transparency. We want openness for the first time. We want an open protocol. We don't want secrets anymore. We don't want small groups of men hiding the real numbers anymore. And so this idea that Bitcoin should be private is a lack of understanding of base layer money. The problem with all other base layer monies that have ever existed is that it wasn't transparent. Even gold is not transparent. And that served as the base layer of money and value for thousands of years. How many ounces of gold have been mined over the past 6,000 years? Who has that number? Nobody. Nobody on earth has that number. When you go search the total value of Bitcoin, I'll tell you what it is now. And I will post the link here now. Based on The reported number that we get today, of gold, right? Second here. We'll post this right now. If you take a look at what I just posted, it is in assets ranked by market cap. All right. You'll see gold at the number 1 spot, and you'll see Bitcoin at the number 9 spot, which means that Bitcoin is the 9th most valuable asset in the world based on market cap, and gold is the most valuable asset on planet Earth measured by market cap. Now, Bitcoin is stated as having a market cap today at current prices of 1.384 trillion, and gold is stated as having a market cap of 15.14 trillion. So more or less, Bitcoin is stated as 1/15th the value of the most valuable asset on Earth, which is gold today. Now, that market cap of gold, 15.141 trillion, who says that? Who says gold is worth 15.141 trillion? How can we verify if that's the real market cap? We weren't around 6,000 years ago. We weren't around 9,000 years ago. We weren't around 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago. You can't tell me that we know every ounce of gold in the world that has ever been mined and is currently sitting above ground. What about, so we're talking about the gold above ground, not even the gold underground that we know is there, that we've identified is there, just haven't dug it up yet, right? All gold above earth. You can't tell me that someone has audited the gold that I have, the gold that you might have, the gold in your watch, the gold in your jewelry, the gold in your ring, the gold that people made faucets out of years ago, the gold in some people's teeth. You can't tell me that number is real. Nobody knows if that number's real. That's a freaking guess, right? But when we go to the number of Bitcoin, 1.384 trillion, that is down to the freaking single Satoshi. Do you understand this? There is no guessing about that number. There is no ambiguity. There's no rounding of that number. This number, this entire base layer of money is audited on average every 10 minutes. That audit is available for every human being on planet Earth to look at and see and verify for themselves. It is immutable. It is beyond doubt. It's maths in your face. It's the only truth of every single asset you have here on this list. All of these numbers are lies, or they're ambiguous at best. The only one that is true, right down to the fraction of a penny, is Bitcoin. That's the only one we can be certain of. And we can be certain of it because it's not private, because the books are open for every human being to investigate and look at and verify for themselves. You don't want a closed private system on the base layer. And anyone who tells you that, as I mentioned, they're either stupid, ignorant, uninformed about what a true, fair, decentralized, sound money should be at the base layer. That's at best that they're just dumb. And at worst, they're a scammer. And they want you to buy their bullshit, and they know better. They all fall into either of those two groups. And the majority of people are just dumb. Privacy is to be achieved on layers above layer one. You want the base layer to be open so that people understand that it's fair, it's open, they see what's happening, there are no secrets, there's nobody controlling the books, there's nobody cooking the books. You need that to not be private. You want privacy? Go to Lightning. Lightning is exponentially more private than the base layer. And you want more privacy than that? These fediments that are going to be built on the layer above that, fediments will have even a higher layer of privacy. Certain side chains that will be built on top of Bitcoin or on the side of Bitcoin will have higher degrees of privacy. Privacy you don't want on the base layer. You can achieve greater levels of privacy on layers built above the base layer. Now, a lot of people don't understand the fact that money is supposed to have layers to it. And so layers can be explained very much how your money has layers. There is your wealth, there is the vast majority of your wealth that's being saved for the future, maybe for your retirement. That is one layer. This is the money that's supposedly in your vault. Maybe it's a 401k plan, or what have you. But this money is not used to buy milk and eggs. That's the base layer of your wealth, right? And then you'll have a higher layer than that. It might be an emergency cash fund that you don't touch on a daily basis. It's there for emergency. That's a different layer than your massive wealth layer for the future. So you have now two layers. You've got your massive wealth that's almost never touched. Maybe you add to it, but it's not touched or spent. It's there for the future. Then you have another layer on top of that, which is an emergency cash layer. Maybe that's 6 months of your salary or something like that for an emergency. Just in case life throws you a curveball, you don't have to take anything from your massive wealth layer. That's a second layer. And then another layer might be a checking account where you do use it occasionally to write a check or send a wire or a payment. Maybe out of that, you pay your mortgage. Maybe out of that checking account, you pay your major monthly bills. And a layer on top of that might be your credit cards and your credit cards that you use for kind of daily purchases. All right, you're going to the movie theater with your family. You're going to use your credit card to pay for that. And maybe you pay off that bill from your checking account once a month. That's another layer. And then another layer might be the individual bills that you have in your jeans pocket. And that's used for just random things you run across that are probably too small or too inconvenient to use your credit card on. And so money is in layers. Now, the dollars in your pocket, in your jeans pocket, that is the most private money. That is the money that no one knows about except you and the person who's receiving your money. So if I meet you in the street and you give me a $10 bill, only you and I know about that transaction. But the money in your retirement account is not private. The money in your checking account is not private. But the money in your jeans pocket is private. Privacy happens on the higher level. You do not want it to happen on the base level, on the base layer. And any shitcoiner who tells you that our coin is more private than Bitcoin, they're dumb. Do you understand? You're dumb with a capital D. It invalidates that money or that dumb shitcoin as sound money right there. Boom. It's out of the window, garbage, done, next. I'm hoping you are picking up what I'm laying down here, guys. All right, what else? Let's see. Okay. I bought Augustine said, I bought ETH on Binance. Then I moved it to my Exodus wallet. Okay. Then swapped it for Bitcoin through Exodus's built-in features. Is this BTC KYC or not KYC? I would say if you have, it's a good question. I would say that I would put that in the category of KYC, just because the trail started from a centralized KYC exchange, I'm assuming, Augustine. And so I would not take the risk of labeling that Bitcoin as non-KYC. That is, KYC stands for know your customer. That your identity is still probably tied to the trail of that Bitcoin. You want the initial act to be totally non-KYC, and that would make every act from there non-KYC. So I would not label that Bitcoin as non-KYC. I am glad you swapped the ETH for Bitcoin, though. I get this quite often as well. Oliver, are you saying that there's never going to be another opportunity outside of Bitcoin, and that's the only opportunity that exists for the world now and going forward? That is not what I'm saying. When I say Bitcoin only, that's not what I mean. What my message is that right now you don't have time to focus on anything else other than Bitcoin. Yes, there are other opportunities. Yes, there are some things that can make you more shitcoin dollars. Yes. But they will always exist, but Bitcoin will not. And so the trick on you now is to get you distracted from the thing that is disappearing and the thing that in the future will never, ever be able to be bought again. We're living in a very unique time in Bitcoin's evolution. We're living at a time where people are willing to give you to take government money for the scarcest asset on earth. Government printed money that goes down in purchasing power every second you hold it. It's bullshit. They're willing to accept bullshit for the scarcest, hardest money that humans have ever had access to. This will not last forever. People are not going to accept bullshit for the most valuable thing on earth. Bitcoin is on its way to becoming the most valuable asset on planet Earth. It is all, as of April 20th, it will be the hardest asset the world has ever known, the scarcest asset the world has ever known. I want you to put those three things together. The most valuable thing humans have ever had or known. Bitcoin's on its way to that. April 20th, it becomes the hardest asset the world has ever known. And it becomes the hardest money the world has ever known. These three things will ultimately drive people to understand that I am not going to give the most valuable thing in the world up for something that goes down in purchasing power every single time, every single second I hold it. I'm not going to give up number one for trash anymore. Right now, we're so early that people are willing to give up their most valuable thing for trash. And as long as they're willing to accept trash from us for this, the scarcest thing on earth, the hardest thing on earth, and soon to be the most valuable thing on earth, as long as they're willing to do it, you need to make that trade. People often say, Oliver, so what? How much is enough Bitcoin? You're thinking the wrong way. It's not about how much. It's about how long you can give trash for the most valuable thing on earth. There's no number to that. As long as there's a dummy willing to give up the most valuable thing on earth for your trash, you do it. Price has nothing to do with it. Amounts or goals have nothing to do with it. You make that trade forever. And I used this in my last talk. I think 2 talks ago, I used this analogy. Whether or not this story that I was taught in school, and many of you were taught in school if you're American, is true or not is besides the point. It drives what I'm about to say home, like a dagger to the heart. I was taught as a child that Manhattan is a native Indian name, right? Manhattan. And the native Indians did not understand the concept that man owns God's land. This is not something that was part of their culture. That you don't own, that the land is from God. A man doesn't own God's property. That it is available for use by man, but man doesn't own it. So the concept of property ownership was not part of the Native American experience. So when Europeans started to settle in the new land, America, they came with the concept of property ownership. And so what they wound up doing is swapping the entire Manhattan today. Manhattan was sold to the Europeans for one pig and a blanket, one single blanket to stay warm. Now think about this. You know how valuable Manhattan is today. There are apartments that are built on top of Manhattan that are tens of millions of dollars. All right. This entire land was supposedly exchanged for one pig, a pig, and one blanket to stay warm. Now, how many of you would make that exchange today? All of you. And what if you could make that exchange every day? Would you do it? What if there was another Manhattan tomorrow that you could exchange for a pig and a blanket? Would you say, I'm tired, I'm not doing this exchange anymore? Is there any point at which you wouldn't do that exchange? No. Would you continue to get more Manhattans for more pigs than a blanket? Of course. And so it's the same. People are exchanging Bitcoin for a pig and a blanket. Do you understand? Bitcoin is the digital Manhattan today, upon which tomorrow's 10, 20, $50 trillion companies will be built. The internet brought into being the world's first $1 trillion assets, right? Well, if the companies that tied themselves into the Bitcoin became $1 trillion assets, what's the value of the internet? But we weren't given the ability to own pieces of the internet. We were given ability to own pieces of the entities on top of the internet. But for the first time in the human experience, we have the ability to own a piece of the base layer protocol. We can own Manhattan, not a building or a condo in a building on top of Manhattan. We can own Manhattan today. We can own a piece. We can stake our claim. And we can get that for pigs in a blanket. And as long as someone's willing to take a pig in a blanket for your digital Manhattan, for your Bitcoin, you do it. There is no top to that. There is no limit. There's no getting tired of that. There's no price at which that is wrong. Get rid of your pigs in a blanket and get as much of Manhattan, digital Manhattan, Bitcoin as you possibly can. And as long as there's some dummy, as long as there's some fool, as long as there's some uninformed, uneducated person that values a pig in a blanket more than Manhattan, you make that exchange. All right, guys. What else have we got for me here? All right. Bart's asking me about ordinals, which is something that I answered quite thoroughly. And I believe yesterday's talk, Bart. So if you don't mind, I'd like to refer you to that. All right. I did a very thorough answer to that in yesterday's live session. So refer to that. All right. I'm split on the issue as just a general precursor to your going to yesterday's live session, but I'm split on the issue, and I explained very thoroughly why I am. It's sort of like Senator Elizabeth Warren going off a cliff in my brand new Ferrari. I'm split just like that. So go there and you'll understand why, if you don't mind. Yeah, one of the reasons, guys, that I started doing these talks is to really have something to refer people to, because I do find myself just repetitively answering the same things like 1,000 times. And so by having an actual link to something that addresses that I can share makes, what I'm doing here a lot more efficient for me. All right. All right, guys, what else here? Nothing? You guys have got nothing for me. How many people are here, by the way? Let's see. What is this here? Oh, not bad. We got about 60 people here, so more or less. But no one has any questions, though. Nothing else? Nothing else on this beautiful Sunday? Everyone's quiet today. All right, well, we got a few things out of the way here today. I'm going to check one more time before I leave you. All right, guys. Well, listen, I do want to thank the 60 or so odd people here for piping in live. I want to thank you for joining me. I want to remind you that each and every one of my live sessions, they do wind up on my Bitcoin podcast entitled Bitcoin Unleashed. I have penned all the places that you can access Bitcoin Unleashed from, all the podcasting platforms in one place that is conveniently pinned at the top of my X profile. Please refer to that. If you found anything that I had to say today of interest, then you're likely to find some more things of interest on some of my prior live talks. So please seek that out. I appreciate that. Understand that I am after nothing other than you understanding that our window of time to accumulate the scarcest, the most valuable, the hardest asset, money we've ever come in contact with, that our window of opportunity is closing on us, that while there are other opportunities, there's no other opportunity, that all other opportunities pale in comparison. That my message is that you can't allow the world right now to distract you away from this, because it is disappearing, it is going away, and there will come a point in your lifetime where you will not be able to buy this. You'll be able to work for it. You'll be able to deliver value for it. But some people are not going to accept an inferior thing for it. They're not going to accept government printed money in the future for this. You will not be able to buy this with dollars or yen or euro. All right. You're not going to be able to exchange Manhattan for a pig in a blanket. The same way no one will accept a pig in a blanket for anything built on top of Manhattan today, much less Manhattan itself. And this is coming in the future for Bitcoin. No one's going to accept your pigs in a blanket, your dollars, your pesos, your euros, your Turkish lira. No one's going to accept that bullshit for Bitcoin. And so you don't have a lot of time. You need to focus on this. There will always be other opportunities. Drop that for now. There's always other things to do. Drop that right now, because those things are not disappearing. This is disappearing. That is my message. I don't want any money from you. I don't need your money. I just want you to look and realize that we're very unique in our timing as human beings. There will be billions of human beings born after today. Billions born. It is estimated that in the year 2050, that there will be over 10 billion people on Earth. That's 2 billion more than today. 2 billion more people who aren't even born yet. Or even those, some who have just recently been born, they will never be able to buy Bitcoin, ever. All the billions of human beings born in the future will never have our opportunity. So this is not a time to get distracted by shit coins or altcoins or this or that. It is time for 100% focus here. And while the vast majority of you will not take heed to that message, some of you will. And it's to you to whom I speak. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Happy Easter, happy Resurrection Day for those of you who celebrate. Love you guys to death. Back at the game tomorrow. Don't forget, go to work. Stack harder. Stack harder. Go to work, guys. Ciao for now. Boom.
My name is Oliver Velez, and I am your 13%er Bitcoiner. Be safe out there, and until next time.